If you want to attract a woman, especially one who might not immediately be interested in you, the very first place to start is not with her. It is with you. And that's something most men don't want to hear because it forces responsibility back onto their own shoulders. It's easier to imagine there's some secret line, some magic trick, or some formula that bypasses all the difficult work of self-transformation. But the truth is, if you are disordered inside, if you're lost, distracted, weak, resentful, then it doesn't matter what words come out of your mouth. She will feel it. People don't respond only to what you say, they respond to what you are. Women, in particular, are extraordinarily sensitive to this, because across thousands of years of evolutionary history, their survival and the survival of their children depended on whether they could accurately detect the character of a man. They had to know, can this man handle reality? Can he carry responsibility? Does he stand firm when chaos erupts? Or does he collapse? And those signals are not conveyed in some calculated performance. They're written into the way you stand, the way you breathe, the way you hold silence. You cannot fake it for long. This is why order within yourself is the foundation. Attraction isn't about appearing confident. It's about being confident. Not arrogant, not inflated, but grounded. Confidence literally means with faith. Faith in your ability to move through life competently, to carry weight without breaking. If your life is chaos, if you're undisciplined, addicted, resentful, sloppy, then that chaos will radiate from you. You can try to hide it behind clever jokes or smooth lines, but she'll feel the instability underneath. And instability never attracts, it only warns. So the work begins with a confrontation. Where in your life is disorder reigning? Maybe your health is broken because you can't control your impulses. Maybe your finances are a disaster because you avoid responsibility. Maybe your emotions are explosive because you refuse to confront your own bitterness. All of that bleeds through you in ways you don't even notice. Your posture says it. Your tone of voice says it. Even your eyes carry the message, I haven't mastered myself. And when that's the case, why would anyone, let alone a woman who values her future, be drawn to step into your world? It's not about perfection because no man is perfect, but it is about trajectory. Are you moving upward or downward? Are you wrestling with your weaknesses or surrendering to them? Because if you're wrestling, truly striving, genuinely aiming, then people feel that as well. A man who is imperfect but striving upward is infinitely more attractive than a man who is comfortable in his decline. The striving communicates growth, and growth is magnetic. When you embody order, you don't have to try so hard to be noticed. Order speaks louder than performance. There's a quiet dignity in a man who knows who he is, who accepts responsibility, who sets his house in order before he goes trying to change the world. Women sense that. And it doesn't come across as showmanship because it isn't, it's real. Think of it this way. Every human being carries chaos inside of them, doubts, fears, desires, impulses. Life itself is chaos. What we seek in others is not someone who will eliminate chaos entirely, but someone strong enough to face it without collapsing. That's what it means to be attractive. It's not muscles or wealth or charm, although those things can play a role. It's the deeper signal. I can hold myself together. I can carry weight. I can move forward with purpose. And when you embody that, even a woman who might not have been interested at first will pause, because something inside her recognizes stability. This is also why arrogance is so destructive. Arrogance is a counterfeit of order. It's pretending you've mastered yourself when you haven't. It's posturing instead of embodying. Women see through it, and worse, they feel the fragility behind it. A man who loudly declares his strength is often the weakest in the room. Real order doesn't need to shout. It radiates quietly, like gravity. So ask yourself, do you have order within? Have you cleaned your room? Not only literally, though that matters, but also metaphorically? Have you aligned your habits, disciplined your desires, organized your direction in life? Or are you walking into an interaction hoping she won't notice the disorder trailing behind you? Because she will. And the more you try to hide it, the louder it becomes. Start there. Confront your own chaos. Put your life in order one piece at a time. Build yourself into someone you can respect, because if you don't respect yourself, why should she? Attraction begins with self-respect, and self-respect is earned, not gifted. You earn it by doing the difficult things you know you should do. And when you do, you carry yourself differently. That difference is noticed. It cannot be faked because it is real. And here's the paradox. When you do this, when you pursue order for its own sake, not merely to attract someone, you become attractive almost as a byproduct. Because people, women especially, are drawn to those who embody stability in a chaotic world. They are drawn to strength that does not need to prove itself. They are drawn to truth shining through a man who has faced his own darkness and come out carrying light. So, if you want to attract her, begin with order within yourself. Stand upright, not just with your shoulders, but with your character. Face your own chaos before you go searching for someone to share life with. Because the woman you seek is not looking for someone to save her from the storm. She is looking for someone who can walk through it beside her without being destroyed. And that begins, always, with you. Once you've begun the process of ordering yourself, of standing upright and wrestling your own chaos into something resembling structure, the next step is how you actually approach her. And this is where so many men go wrong. They think approaching a woman is about performance, about playing some kind of role, executing a strategy, or deploying a clever set of lines that will magically shift her perception. That's manipulation, and manipulation is rooted in fear. And people, especially women, are astonishingly good at detecting fear disguised as confidence. They can sense when your words are hollow, when your posture doesn't match your intent. And when they sense it, they recoil because no one wants to be approached as an object of a tactic. The truth is that your approach has to be grounded in respect, not strategy. Respect changes the entire dynamic. Think of it this way. When you approach a woman, you are walking into a moment of potential vulnerability for both of you. She doesn't know you. She doesn't know your intentions. She has to assess very quickly whether you are safe, whether you're authentic, whether you are someone she can take seriously. And if you walk in with the mindset of, how do I get something from her? She will feel that immediately. The energy of taking is heavy, it presses, it suffocates. Nobody wants to be approached by someone who is fundamentally there to consume them. Respect, on the other hand, communicates something entirely different. It says, I see you as a person. I recognize your sovereignty, your freedom, your right to say yes or no. Respect acknowledges her humanity first, before your desire. And paradoxically, when you approach with genuine respect, you remove much of the defensiveness that often shuts men down. Because she doesn't feel like you're trying to trick her or corner her. She feels you are meeting her as an equal, another soul in the world, with no pretense. And respect doesn't mean timid. It doesn't mean you shrink away or apologize for your interest. That's another mistake men make. They confuse respect with weakness. They think being respectful means becoming passive, hiding their attraction behind polite conversation, never daring to reveal themselves. But that's not respect. That's fear masquerading as virtue. Real respect is fused with confidence. It says, I value you and I value myself. And because I value myself, I'm willing to state my interest honestly, without disguise, without shame. That balance, confidence without arrogance, respect without fear, is magnetic. Consider how many interactions in our culture are corrupted by manipulation. People play games constantly, pretend to be interested when they're not, act indifferent when they care, project strength when they feel weak. It's exhausting, and it leads to shallow, brittle connections. When you step outside that game, when you approach someone with clarity, I'd like to know you because I think you're interesting. It cuts through the noise. It's rare, and rarity stands out. Respect also transforms your own psychology. When you approach from a place of strategy or desperation, your body tightens. You second-guess yourself. You're hyper-focused on her reaction, and that anxiety leaks out in every gesture. But when you approach with respect, you don't need her approval to validate you. You're simply expressing something real, and whether she accepts it or not, you remain intact. You haven't compromised your integrity. That integrity is what people feel, even in a brief encounter. There's also a deeper layer to this. Approaching with respect is not only about her, it's about aligning yourself with truth. When you speak truthfully, When you treat others as sovereign individuals, you strengthen your own soul. You refuse to participate in the degrading game of manipulation, and instead, you engage in the far nobler act of genuine human interaction. That alignment with truth is noticeable because truth has a presence. It steadies your voice, it calms your nerves, it grounds you in the moment, and people can sense it. Now, let's be honest. Even if you approach with full respect, sometimes she won't be interested. That's reality. But here's the important thing: when you've approached with dignity, you walk away with dignity. You haven't lost anything. You haven't humiliated yourself, because you acted from a place of authenticity, not from a place of need. And ironically, when you carry yourself like that, when you're willing to risk rejection without losing your center, you become the kind of man who is attractive even in failure. Because failure with integrity is infinitely more compelling than success with deceit. So don't approach her like you're running a strategy. Approach her like you're meeting another human being whose presence you value enough to acknowledge. Speak honestly, look her in the eyes, stand as though you belong where you're standing. Don't beg for attention, and don't try to trick your way into it. Respect is the most underrated form of strength because it requires you to restrain the grasping impulse, the selfish impulse, and instead act from a higher principle. That's rare. That's powerful. And that's exactly what women notice. Because here's the truth: when you approach a woman with genuine respect, you communicate not only how you see her, but how you see yourself. You reveal that you don't need games to prove your worth, that you don't need to dominate to feel strong. You reveal that you have the courage to risk rejection without compromising your honesty. That combination, respect fused with courage, is unforgettable. Once you've begun to build order within yourself, and once you understand that approaching her has to be grounded in respect rather than strategy, the next layer is how you actually communicate when you're in her presence. And this is where most men stumble. They think strength means invulnerability, as if the only way to appear attractive is to present themselves as perfectly composed, unaffected, untouchable. But that's not strength. That's a performance. And people, especially women, see through it instantly. Real strength is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the courage to carry vulnerability without collapsing under it. To stand in front of someone and be real enough, honest enough, to reveal yourself without hiding behind bravado. That is far rarer and far more powerful than the mask of invincibility. Because the mask might impress for a moment, but it doesn't build trust. And trust is the soil in which attraction takes root. Think about it. If you present yourself as flawless, as if nothing ever touches you, what are you really communicating? You're signaling that you can't be known. You're a fortress. A fortress might be intimidating, but it's also cold, impenetrable, and lonely. Nobody falls in love with a wall. People fall in love with a person, someone who bleeds, someone who doubts, someone who struggles, but who struggles with dignity. That's what resonates, because that's what's real. And yet, vulnerability alone is not enough. If you walk into an interaction spilling your insecurities without any strength to hold them, you come across as weak, and weakness doesn't draw people in. It pushes them away. Vulnerability has to be paired with strength. That's the paradox. Too much strength without vulnerability, and you look arrogant, unreachable. Too much vulnerability without strength, and you look needy, unstable. But when the two meet, when you can reveal truth while remaining grounded, that balance creates something magnetic. A man who can say, "I find you interesting," and yes, there's risk in admitting that, but I'll say it anyway, is demonstrating both courage and openness. He's not hiding his interest out of fear of rejection, nor is he demanding validation to soothe his insecurity. He is standing on his own feet, steady enough to risk honesty, but human enough to admit the cost. That's strength through vulnerability. Women are drawn to that balance because it signals psychological maturity. It shows that you're not living in a fantasy of invulnerability, but neither are you drowning in fragility. You've integrated both, the toughness to endure and the softness to connect. And that combination is extremely rare. Most men err on one side or the other. They either build a facade of hardness to cover their fear, or they collapse into oversharing in a desperate attempt to win sympathy. Both approaches fail because neither is grounded in truth. There's also a deeper reason this balance is so compelling. Life itself is a tension between chaos and order, between what we can control and what we cannot. To embody both strength and vulnerability is to embody life in its fullness. It's to say, I know chaos exists. I know I can be hurt, but I also know I have the capacity to endure, to grow, to rise above it. That's the kind of energy that makes people trust you. And trust precedes attraction always. Let's be practical. Imagine you approach a woman and you try to project nothing but dominance. You puff your chest, you speak too loudly, you act as though rejection couldn't possibly touch you. Maybe, at first, you look confident. But soon, the cracks show. She realizes you're performing. And performance, without truth, creates distance. Now imagine the opposite. You approach her and immediately unload your self-doubt. You talk nervously. You reveal every insecurity in the hope that she'll reassure you. That, too, collapses because it's too much chaos with no structure to hold it. But what if, instead, you walked up and said something honest, simple, human? I'd like to get to know you. Not pretending you don't care, not begging for approval, just stating your interests plainly, while carrying yourself with steadiness. That's strength. And in that plain truth, there's also vulnerability because you've admitted risk. She could reject you, but you've revealed that you can face rejection without being destroyed by it. That balance is compelling in a way that no strategy can replicate. The challenge is that it requires real work. It requires you to face your own insecurities directly, rather than hiding them behind arrogance or drowning in them. It requires you to build enough strength to hold your vulnerabilities without crumbling. That means discipline, responsibility, the work of self-mastery. But it also means honesty, openness, and the willingness to admit that you are not invincible. Very few men have the courage to do both, but those who do stand out immediately. And here's the final point. When you embody strength through vulnerability, you give permission for others to do the same. You create a space where authenticity is possible. That's why it builds trust so quickly, because it's not just about what you're showing, it's about what you're allowing. You're saying, I'm willing to be real. You can be real too. And that creates a connection that superficial charm can never replicate. So remember, strength without vulnerability is a mask. Vulnerability without strength is chaos. But strength carried through vulnerability, that is authenticity. And authenticity is what makes people pause, look again, and think there's something different about him. If you've put order into your own life, if you've learned to approach her with respect rather than strategy, and if you've understood the paradox of strength and vulnerability, then the final piece is this. You must learn to detach from the outcome. And this might be the most difficult lesson of all. Because most men, when they approach a woman, have an agenda. They're thinking about the number, the date, the kiss, the validation. They're calculating, consciously or unconsciously, what they can get out of this moment. And you can feel it. You can feel when someone is gripping too tightly, when they're desperate for a particular result. It creates tension. It's the energy of scarcity. And scarcity repels. Think about it this way. If you walk up to someone with the energy that says, I need you to respond in a certain way so I can feel okay about myself, you've already lost. You've given your power away before you've spoken a word. You're no longer standing as an equal, you're begging. And no amount of clever phrasing will disguise that. It leaks through in your tone, your body, your eyes. And it suffocates attraction, because attraction requires freedom. That's why detachment from outcome is so crucial. It means you are there to speak truth, to reveal interest honestly, but not to cling to a particular response. You say, this is who I am, this is what I see in you, and I think that's worth expressing. And then you let it go. If she responds positively, good. If she doesn't, also good. Because your worth was never dependent on her answer in the first place. This is liberating because it shifts the entire frame of the interaction. You're no longer chasing, you're offering. You're no longer trying to extract validation, you're extending authenticity. That shift is enormous because it changes how you carry yourself. You don't appear tense because you're not trying to force a result. You don't appear needy because you're not grasping at her attention like it's oxygen. You appear grounded, steady, abundant. And abundance is what attracts. Now, detachment doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean you don't care whether she responds. Of course you care. That's why you approached in the first place. But it means you don't depend on her response to justify yourself. There's a difference. Caring is human. Depending is bondage. Detachment is about freedom, the freedom to express desire without being enslaved by the need for a specific outcome. Paradoxically, this freedom is what often awakens attraction, even in someone who wasn't interested at first. Because you're not chasing. You're not trying to convince. You're simply being. And that energy, calm, confident, truthful, is magnetic. People lean into it because it feels different. It feels safe. It feels real. This requires inner work, of course. You can't detach from outcomes if your entire sense of self is built on external validation. You can't approach freely if your worth is hanging by the thread of her reaction. That's why the earlier steps matter so much. Ordering yourself, approaching with respect, balancing strength and vulnerability. Detachment flows naturally from those foundations. When you know who you are, when you've built stability, when you respect yourself, then you don't need every interaction to succeed. You're free to let things unfold because you trust your own trajectory. And this principle applies far beyond attraction. It applies to life itself. If you spend your days grasping for outcomes, desperate for everything to unfold exactly as you want, you live in perpetual anxiety. But if you act truthfully, with integrity, and then release the result, you live in peace. You can carry yourself with calmness because you're no longer trying to control everything that is, by its nature, uncontrollable. So when you approach a woman, do it from this place. Don't go in thinking, how do I make her like me? That's already the wrong frame. Instead, think, I will reveal something real, and whatever happens, I remain whole. That mindset makes you resilient, and resilience is the hallmark of genuine strength. And here's something profound to consider. Women are not only assessing whether they're attracted to you in the moment. They are assessing whether you can carry the weight of a relationship, the unpredictability of life, the storms that will inevitably come. A man who clings desperately to outcomes cannot carry storms. He collapses at the first sign of resistance. But a man who can remain steady in uncertainty, who can express himself honestly and still remain intact if rejected, that man communicates a capacity for life itself. And that is deeply attractive. So stop thinking of attraction as a game to win or lose. Think of it as an opportunity to practice truth in action, to stand upright, to speak honestly, to offer respect, to balance strength with vulnerability, and then to let go of what you cannot control. That's not just how you attract women, it's how you live well.